I arrived home earlier than I typically would that evening. The humidity outside hung thick in the air, a sign of the storm that was about to break. Inside, the house felt unnaturally quiet. The usual sounds of Lila bustling around downstairs were conspicuously absent. My thoughts were still a tangled mess from a long day at work, deadlines, meetings, and the relentless grind. All I craved was to walk through that door, pop open a cold beer, and sink into the couch. Perhaps I'd catch a brief moment of relaxation before Lila shared whatever trivial activities had filled her day. But the instant I stepped inside, something felt amiss. It wasn't overt at first, just a subtle change in the atmosphere. The air seemed different, heavier, almost oppressive. It wrapped around me as I lingered in the entryway, straining to understand what had shifted. There was no TV murmuring in the background, no clinking dishes in the sink, and no footsteps approaching to greet me. Just an unsettling silence. I began to ascend the stairs, though I couldn't quite explain what drew me upward. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was intuition. Yet, something in the pit of my stomach urged me to follow the eerie stillness as I neared the top. I slowed my pace, attempting to make as little noise as possible. And then I heard it, a sound that made me halt, a muffled groan, soft yet unmistakable. I didn't want to believe it. I fought against acknowledging the reality of what my instincts were screaming at me. For a moment, I was caught between disbelief and rage, my heart pounding so fiercely in my chest it felt as if it might explode. But I remained frozen. I couldn't bring myself to move. Not yet. Another moan, louder this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of movement. It was emanating from the bedroom, our bedroom. I edged closer, the carpet absorbing my footsteps as I reached the door. It stood slightly ajar, just enough for me to catch a glimpse in the mirror on the opposite wall. And there they were, entwined on the bed I had shared with Lila for years. She was beneath him, her face flushed and lost in the moment, utterly oblivious to my presence, and him. Lucas, my best friend, the guy who had stood by my side at our wedding, who had toasted to our happiness, who had been part of my life for as long as I could remember. He was hovering over her, his body pressing into hers in a way that twisted my stomach. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut, raw and visceral. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I didn't utter a sound. I just stood there, watching. Every fiber of my being urged me to burst in, tear them apart, and make them pay for their treachery. In that moment, I wanted to, but I didn't. My fists clenched tightly, knuckles turning white as I fought the overwhelming urge to kick down the door, smash his face in, and scream at Lila, demanding answers, forcing her to explain how she could throw away everything we'd built together for a fleeting moment of cheap passion with the one person I had once called my brother. But no, that would be too easy, too impulsive. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I slowly backed away, retreating down the stairs as quietly as I had arrived. Each step felt heavier than the last, my mind swirling with rage, betrayal, and something colder, purpose. I wasn't going to confront them. Not now. Not like this. There was something far more satisfying about the plan I was hatching. Once I reached the bottom of the stairs, I slipped out the front door, making sure to close it quietly behind me. The world outside had turned dark, and the first drops of rain began to fall. But I barely noticed. I wandered to my car in a daze. Every breath I took was laced with anger. Sitting behind the wheel, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that I thought it might snap in my hands. The image of them together burned in my mind, her face alight with pleasure, his body looming over hers as if he had every right to be there. This kind of betrayal doesn't merely shatter trust. It obliterates it completely, leaving a void where love once flourished. But this wouldn't culminate in a blind, furious rage. No, I would grant them time. Time to think they had gotten away with it. Time to believe I was completely oblivious. Lila, sweet, deceitful Lila, would continue her charade, playing the devoted wife, preparing my dinners, kissing me goodnight. While I sat there, knowing she was sneaking off to be with him. And Lucas? He would carry on as if nothing were wrong, as if he weren't sleeping with the one person he should never have touched. They thought they were clever, hiding their affair from me, But I was about to show them what true cleverness looked like. My plan came to me slowly, but with a clarity that even surprised me. I wasn't just going to expose them. I intended to dismantle their lives piece by piece. I would strip away everything that mattered to them, and the best part was that they wouldn't see it coming. By the time they realized what I had done, it would be too late. And Lucas? He had no idea how personal this was about to get. He cherished his wife, Chloe, as if she were a precious trophy. Always so proud of his little family. Well, if he wanted to destroy mine, then it was only fair I dismantled his in return. I would take Chloe from him, not just away from him, but in the most intimate way possible. I would make her mine, just as he had done with Lila. But unlike him, I wouldn't rush it. This wasn't about a cheap affair. No, this was about power, control, revenge. I started the car, the engine roaring to life as the rain intensified, pounding against the windshield. My grip on the wheel relaxed a little, a cold smile creeping across my face. This wasn't the end of my marriage. It was just the beginning of their downfall, and I was going to savor every moment of it. That night, I drove aimlessly through the rain-soaked streets, letting the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the windshield drown out the storm brewing within me. The anger still simmered, but it had morphed into something colder and sharper. The initial shock of catching Lila and Lucas together faded, replaced by a clear, calculated determination. Revenge. Genuine revenge couldn't be hurried. It wasn't something to be executed in a fit of rage that would leave me looking like the fool they believed me to be. No, I wanted to dismantle them both, piece by piece, so that when they finally grasped what had happened, they would be left standing amidst the ruins of their own lives. To do that, I needed to start with Lucas. I parked in a shadowy lot, rain pelting the car as I sat, my mind racing like a runaway train. Lucas was always full of himself, confident in his belief that he could take what was mine without any consequences. The truth was he had no idea how exposed he really was. To him, I was just a naive pushover, but he didn't realize how well I knew his life, his vulnerabilities, and yes, his wife, Chloe. Chloe was the key to all of this. Lucas and Chloe had been together forever, embodying that idyllic suburban lifestyle, a cozy house, a couple of kids, and the quintessential white picket fence. He flaunted their perfect life at every opportunity, boasting about his accomplishments. What better way to strike at him than to take from him what he cherished most? But this wasn't going to be a cheap thrill where I simply seduced her and bragged about it afterward. No, it had to be much more profound, more intimate. I didn't just want to sleep with Chloe. I intended to take her away from him in the most gut-wrenching way imaginable. I would make her fall for me, make her question everything she believed about Lucas. In the end, she would lose faith in him and choose me, not out of mere lust, but from a place of genuine love. And when that moment came, I would allow Lucas to witness as everything he held dear crumbled before his eyes. What made this plan so exquisite was how effortless it would be. I understood Chloe's insecurities, her fears, and her longings. She wasn't like Lila. Chloe was more subdued, contemplative, with a delicate nature that Lucas never truly valued. To him, she was simply another trophy, something to show off at family functions or among friends. But I knew better. I had seen the fractures in their relationship long before this moment. I had witnessed her vulnerability, and now I was ready to exploit it. As I glanced at my phone, I pondered whether tonight was the night to make my first move. But no, patience was crucial. I couldn't come on too strong or act impulsively. I needed to lay the groundwork with precision. So, I drove home, settling back into my role as the unsuspecting husband. Lila had no clue about my knowledge, and that was my greatest weapon. Entering the house, I could hear Lila humming softly upstairs, preparing for bed. Each note of that song echoed with her betrayal. I kept my expression neutral as I moved through the kitchen, grabbing a drink. She appeared downstairs, donning one of my old, worn t-shirts, the kind she always loved to sleep in. It used to be charming, but now it felt like a cruel joke. "You're home late," she remarked casually, filling a glass with water. The nonchalance in her tone sent chills down my spine, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just betrayed me in our bed. The audacity was almost impressive. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Got caught up at work." She approached me, kissing my cheek, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. "I missed you today." I flashed her a cold smile, one that had become my mask. "I missed you too." The lies flowed from my lips effortlessly now, as if they were second nature. As she turned to head back upstairs, I watched her retreat, contemplating how long she thought she could maintain this charade. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not until my plan was fully in motion. She and Lucas believed they were secure, convinced they could carry on their affair in secret. Little did they know, the ground beneath them was already beginning to shift. The following day, I initiated my plan. I reached out to Chloe, framing it as a casual check-in, something any friend would do. We had known each other for years, so a little small talk wouldn't raise any alarms. I sent her a simple message, asking how she was doing and if she wanted to catch up. She replied almost instantly, likely relieved to find a distraction from whatever hollow excuse of a relationship she had left with Lucas. Within a few days, we set up a meeting for coffee. This wasn't unusual. Lucas and I were close, and the four of us had shared plenty of time together over the years. But this time was different. This was a calculated move. We met at a quiet cafe in town, the type of place where no one paid attention to who occupied which table. Chloe looked worn out, the weight of life pressing down on her. She smiled when she saw me, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, keeping my tone light and friendly. "It's been a while since we caught up." "Yeah, it has," she replied, her voice soft and a bit strained. "Things have been busy." I didn't need her to elaborate. I knew exactly what she meant. Lucas, the so-called perfect husband, was anything but. I encouraged her to talk, asking about the kids, her studio, all while observing her closely, taking note of every subtle change in her expression and every flicker of doubt that crossed her face. Then the conversation turned personal, and I felt I had her right where I wanted her. "I've been struggling with everything lately," she admitted, her gaze dropping to the table. "It feels like Lucas and I are drifting apart, like we're not connecting anymore." I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice low and filled with concern. "I'm sorry to hear that, Chloe. You deserve so much better." Her eyes met mine, searching for something, validation perhaps. I gave it to her, fully aware of what she craved. "You've always been such a good friend," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I don't know what I'd do without people like you." I smiled, warmth in my expression entirely feigned. "You're not alone. I'm always here if you need to talk." She smiled back, but it was a sad one, a smile belonging to someone beginning to realize that her perfect life wasn't so perfect after all. And that's exactly what I wanted, to sow the seeds of doubt in her mind, to make her question everything she thought she knew. That was my mission. As I left the cafe that afternoon, a surge of triumph washed over me. Everything was falling into place, one calculated move after another. Lucas was blissfully unaware that the woman he was betraying me with would soon be the very one who would cause him to lose everything. I walked back to my car, the rain drizzling softly, a fitting backdrop to the storm brewing inside me. This was just the beginning. The day after my meeting with Chloe, I felt an exhilarating thrill simmer beneath the calm facade I presented to the world. The slow burn of revenge had ignited, and I was fully committed now. Lucas remained blind to the trap tightening around him, while Chloe was starting to look at me as more than just her husband's friend. It was subtle, but that was the way I wanted it for now. She needed to trust me, to see me as someone who understood her in ways Lucas never could. Meanwhile, Lila continued to play her part, completely oblivious to the shifting tides. She still bombarded me with mundane texts during the day, insipid messages about grocery lists or weekend plans, while I was acutely aware of where her thoughts wandered when I wasn't around. She assumed I was oblivious, that I hadn't caught on to the twisted game she and Lucas were playing. But soon, she would discover how utterly mistaken she was. It was a Thursday evening, roughly a week after my coffee with Chloe, when I decided it was time to escalate my plan. I knew Lucas would be stuck at work late, entangled in a big project that he had mentioned. It served as the perfect cover for his extracurricular escapades. But tonight, it wasn't Lila I was focused on. It was Chloe. I made my way to their house, my excuse already solidified in my mind. I would drop by unannounced, playing the role of the concerned friend. Chloe had confided in me during our last conversation, expressing feelings of neglect. I knew she would welcome the visit, even appreciate the company. As I pulled up to their two-story home, the rain intensified, the streetlights casting a warm glow on the slick pavement. Through their living room window, I caught a glimpse of the flickering TV light, a cozy scene illuminated from behind the curtains. It felt almost too easy. I knocked on the door, ensuring my demeanor was casual and unhurried. A moment later, Chloe opened the door, surprise evident on her face. "Oh, hey," she exclaimed, stepping aside to let me in. "I didn't expect to see you," she added, genuine surprise coloring her tone. I smiled nonchalantly, shaking off the rain from my jacket. "Yeah, I thought I'd drop by and check in. Just happened to be in the neighborhood." It was a complete fabrication. I hadn't been anywhere near their neighborhood. But the look in her eyes showed that she didn't mind. She seemed genuinely happy to see me, even if she didn't yet realize why. "Lucas is not home," she said, a hint of apology lacing her voice. "I know," I replied, my tone casual and relaxed. "I'm here for you." The words took her by surprise, and I noticed the flicker of uncertainty cross her features. Quickly, she masked it, offering me a smile as she led me into the living room. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked, her voice light but tinged with a hint of nervousness. "Wine would be great," I said, settling into the couch as she disappeared into the kitchen. I could hear the clinking of glasses and the soft hum of the refrigerator door opening and closing. When she returned, she handed me a glass of red and took a seat next to me, closer than usual. "How are you holding up?" I asked, keeping my voice low and warm, the perfect picture of concern. Chloe sighed, staring into her glass. "It's been tough," she admitted. "Lucas has been so distant, and I don't know. Sometimes it feels like he doesn't care at all." I nodded, feigning empathy. "You're not wrong to feel that way," I said, careful to maintain a supportive tone. "You know how Lucas can be. He often fails to appreciate what he has." She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. "You've always been so good to us," she said quietly. "I honestly don't know what I'd do without friends like you." I let her words linger, allowing their weight to settle between us. Then, I reached over and placed my hand gently on her knee. "You deserve more than this, Chloe," I whispered, my voice soft and sincere. "You deserve someone who truly values you." Her breath caught, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she sat there, staring at me, the uncertainty in her eyes beginning to shift towards something deeper. I felt the air change, thickening with tension as the space between us seemed to shrink. "I don't know what to do," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "I do," I said, leaning in just enough to signal my intent but not crossing that delicate line. "At least not yet. You deserve better than what Lucas gives you, and I think you know that in your heart." Her gaze fell to where my hand rested on her knee, and I could see the battle waging within her. She was torn between her loyalty to her husband and the undeniable allure of something she craved, something Lucas had clearly failed to provide. "I shouldn't," she started, but I gently interrupted her, my voice soothing and coaxing. "I'm not asking for anything, Chloe. I'm simply speaking the truth." She hesitated, her breath shallow, and for a brief moment, I feared she might pull away. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, she leaned toward me, her lips parting ever so slightly, her eyes fluttering shut. It would have been so easy to kiss her then, to take that final step. But no, not yet. This wasn't about rushing things. It was about planting the seeds of doubt and desire, letting her come to me when she was ready. That's where the true power lay, in making her want it. I leaned back slightly, creating space between us, observing the confusion play across her face. "I should get going," I said casually, though I let just enough tension linger in the air to keep her on edge. Chloe blinked, as if emerging from a dream. "Yeah, maybe that's a good idea," she murmured. I stood, placing my glass on the coffee table with a deliberate slowness. We'll talk soon, I said, offering a smile that hinted at secrets and promises unspoken. And remember, I'm here for you. As I stepped out of her house, I could sense her gaze lingering on my back, the weight of our conversation still thick in the air. She was teetering on a precipice now, caught in the fragile interplay between loyalty and temptation. All she needed was a gentle nudge, and I would be there to catch her when she fell. By the time I reached my car, the rain had subsided, leaving the air cool and damp. I lingered for a moment, savoring the intoxicating sense of control, knowing that the first phase of my plan was executing flawlessly. Lucas had stolen Lila from me, my wife, my life, but he had no idea that I was orchestrating the same fate for him, only with more precision and patience. When the dust settled, he wouldn't just lose Chloe. He would lose everything that mattered to him. But for now, I was content to wait, to let the tension simmer, to allow the betrayal to bubble beneath the surface until it was ready to explode. The next few days unfolded in a disquieting calm that had become my new normal. Lila continued her charade, sending sweet but hollow texts, playing the devoted wife while sneaking off to meet Lucas. They had grown reckless, perhaps convinced they were too clever for me to catch on. Watching her glide through our home, oblivious to the impending collapse of her carefully constructed facade, almost made me laugh. Yet I could feel the cracks widening. It wouldn't be long before their illusion crumbled. For now, though, I maintained my role, letting her think I was unaware. In fact, I intensified my attentiveness toward her, showering her with affection, compliments, and spontaneous date nights. If she sensed the sudden shift in my behavior, she didn't mention it. She was likely too absorbed in her own affair to notice my act. It was the perfect cover keeping her off balance. But Chloe? She was my true focus now. Since that night in her living room, I had felt a shift in her demeanor. She had started reaching out more. She began confiding in me, sharing her worries and frustrations in a way that felt increasingly intimate. It was subtle, but each time she leaned on me emotionally, I pulled her further from Lucas, creating a rift between them that he couldn't even see. By the end of the week, I was ready to escalate my plans. I had exercised patience, careful not to push too hard, but the timing was right. Lucas was set to leave town for a work conference, a detail he had proudly shared with me just days before. It was almost laughable how oblivious he was, blissfully unaware that his absence would provide me the perfect opportunity to advance my intentions with Chloe. On Friday evening, I shot her a message. Nothing too forward, just a simple, "How are you holding up? Need some company?" Her reply came almost instantly. She was home alone and could definitely use the distraction. I wasted no time. The drive over was quick, but my heart raced with anticipation. The rain had ceased for the night, leaving the streets slick and glimmering under the streetlights. The cool air carried the scent of damp asphalt and something else, a sense of inevitability. Tonight, I would push things a little further. When I arrived at her house, she greeted me with a weary smile. "Thanks for coming," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "It's been a long week." I could see the exhaustion etched on her face, the quiet sadness that seemed to weigh her down. Lucas's neglect had clearly taken its toll, and she looked like someone carrying a burden far too heavy. This was precisely what I had hoped for. "I'm always here when you need me," I replied, giving her the reassuring smile that had begun to feel like second nature. We settled into the living room, the lights dimmed, creating a cozy, intimate atmosphere. She poured us both a glass of wine, a casual gesture that felt electric in the stillness. I sat beside her on the couch, close enough for her to feel my presence, but not so close as to make her uncomfortable. Not yet. At first, we chatted about mundane topics, work, the kids, those little details that filled her daily life. But as the wine flowed and the evening deepened, the conversation began to shift. I could feel her walls crumbling, the vulnerability I had nurtured in her surfacing like a tide. "It's just, I don't know how much longer I can pretend everything's fine," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "Lucas is never around, and when he is, it's like he's a ghost. I feel like I'm losing him, or maybe I've already lost him." Her words hung heavily in the air, thick with emotion. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the crack in her armor that I could slip through. I reached out, gently placing my hand over hers, my touch soft yet deliberate. "You haven't lost him, Chloe," I said quietly. "But maybe it's time to let go of something that isn't there anymore. You deserve more than being an afterthought in your own marriage." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and searching. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice tinged with desperation. "I've tried everything to fix things. I just want to make it work. But I feel so alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're not alone," I replied, my tone steady and reassuring. "I'm here. I've always been here." Then, without a second thought, she leaned in, her lips brushing